Gamey Daddy.
Hello everyone, this is Emmond with Gamey Daddy and I'm here with another video from Tom Clancy's The Division. Well, love them or hate them, Marco Style and SkillUp were two of the most influential content creators in Tom Clancy's The Division. I credit them for the good work that they did in context of this game, because they called out fixes, they exposed exploits, they talked about flawed mechanics, and they pretty much pushed it for the developers to design a better game overall. Even though I staunchly disagreed with them in their viewpoints from time to time, because, I'm not a fan of echo chambers. In fact, I'm prone to respond to opposing comments on my videos because that's where I learn and that's where I grow. So I listened to what they had to say. Most of what they had to say, in fact, a better portion, were very valid into developing this game. So by the end of this video, if you have any opposing views, feel free to include them in the comments, and if you insult me, well, your comment is not going to see the light of day. Oh, anyways, just comment, let's talk about this over and over again. Let's jump into the video now. If you're wondering what contributions Marco and SkillUp made to the game, then you're probably new, or you probably, don't know the history of this game. So let me just give you a few examples. I'm going to give some of my favorites. They're not a lot, but very few. Now, somewhere in patch 1.3, which is, you're talking maybe 7 months ago or something, the G36 was one of the top weapons. Believe it or not, the LVOAC, the lightweight M4, they used to be subpar. The G36 was what really rocked. This was in both PvE and PvP. Its base damage, the focus talent, and all of the stuff that came with it made it one of the top tier. But somewhere along the line, the developers silently nerfed it. I think it was the accuracy of the weapon that got changed, and they didn't give any kind of heads up to the community. Do you know who called them out for that? Yes, the dude, the legend, SkillUp himself. I was so proud of him in that instance. If I could have, I would have mailed him a bottle of wine in the world yonder. But SkillUp, if you still want your bottle of wine, send me your address or something. Send me some address. I'll definitely hook you up, buddy, because really that showed a lot of integrity on his part, and that drew the developers to come to the place where they they stated pretty much the intention of the relationship they wanted with the community, whether they wanted to have a relationship that was very honest with one another. And since that day, it really defined what the developers are pretty much built with the community right now. Another example was during one of the PTS phases. I can't remember which one it was. Marco Style was messing with the skills. He's the skill power guy in this game. Literally, he set out himself to understand mostly how skill power worked. So what he did was he implemented pretty much a no cap 100% skill cooldown build, and instead of hiding it, which he could have done, and exploiting it for himself, he called it out to the developers for a fix. Now, these noble gestures by these two guys cannot go without gratitude from myself and from a good portion of the community. Also, I have to acknowledge Wids, the PvP Wiz, for literally taking PvP to a different level. He pretty much influenced changes to this game, believe it or not. I remember when Wids would run solo manhunts in the Dark Zone. He would run with almost every gear set. In fact, there was one that he did with Nomad. Yes, guys, Nomad. I think the developers saw how powerful Nomad could be, and you know what they did? They reduced the health on kill on that gear set bonus. I mean, Wids would do all kinds of weird stuff outside the meta, and his in-depth experimentation literally exposed some holes in the game and even possible exploit. Provident. Anyways, I'm certain he did not intend to bring these changes, but he literally put fear in the hearts of many agents in the Dark Zone. I'm a fan. I feel like if I feel like PvPing, I just go watch Wids and I get enough PvP out of it. Now, furthermore, let's not forget to mention the boys at Upper Echelon. They value depth and creativity in their theory crafting, and if you haven't seen any of their videos, please, I implore you to go watch them. The guys at UE value off-meta builds and gear combinations that are literally hidden in the hearts of seasoned Division players. Even though most of the UE content is concentrated on PvP, there is no doubt that their input in this game is literally very valuable to all of us. Now, many of you may think that I'm giving too much credit to these content creators because, yes, many people have their opinions about, the things that they've revealed and the things that they have done in their bid to, continue to engage in the community. But if you think I'm giving them too much credit, and if you think that's your premise, then I'm just gonna say that you're mistaken, because love them or hate them, these guys and a host of other content creators have made a significant and valuable input into the formation of this game. Now, that being said, I want to turn my sights on the not so popular aspect of this discussion, and that's how the developers take the feedback from content creators. Yes, so even though we're going to give credit, we still have to call out, you know, certain things that we've seen, that I've seen personally, that I think the content creators and the developers can do better. And the reason I want to talk about this is in anticipation of Division 2 or any other massive title in the future. And, you know, regarding Division 1, we know that the game is pretty much coasting into the second title. So much of these changes or much of these suggestions right now are not going to affect most people, since many of the veterans have taken a break from the game and all that good stuff. So first of all, let me say this. I like Massive Entertainment. In fact, right now, I would say, regardless of the situation, regardless of the relationship that we've had, they're my favorite studio. They literally have transcended an aspect of developer community relationships that other studios long to achieve. The only thing is, when you open yourself up to criticism and you're willing to be vulnerable, well, you have to take the risks that come with it. So if Massive does not reevaluate how it receives feedback from the community, especially from the content creators, I mean the YouTubers, if they don't reevaluate and kind of make sure that they're, you know, making smart decisions on how they're taking this feedback and implementing them, here's what I foresee in the future. They're going to release a game. They're going to take the same approach to reaching out to the community. They're going to take the feedback. They're going to hear complaints. They're going to make changes. And then the inevitable is going to set in. People are going to start complaining more and more, and they start, you know, Massive has shown that sometimes they can make changes without evidence, and you know, some of them are not even necessary, and some of the changes are not like game-breaking changes that need to be made. Sorry. Now in the Division, a good number of changes were just changes of convenience for a minority of the player base versus the good of the entire game itself. If you want to see some changes as well, which I thought were for convenience, just read through all the patch notes so far. So this is what I want to say. Massive needs to design systems on how they prioritize changes so that they can make better decisions regardless. Now let me give you an example. Right now, as we're speaking, there's still hackers in the Division. I mean, the game is a year old, and so far from time to time they show up on PC. But we're here in patch 1.6, and guess what? We're talking about how secret mines are too overpowered or how nimble is OP. In order of priority, no one would disagree with me that hackers are a bigger problem than nimble or seeker mines. If you do, then you have an agenda to fill your own, you know, desire to make the game suit you. Because Massive's inability to provide a solid anti-cheat or even permaban system for hackers turned a lot of people away from this game. If you think not dealing with hackers is less important than changing nimble or seeker mines, then you don't care about the state of the game. Because honestly, if you can deal with the hackers in the game, I'm betting that a lot more people would play the game or play through little things like gear set changes or skill power changes. I mean, this is, I don't know, maybe I think, you know, this is a big deal, or somebody else thinks it's not a big deal, but I mean, come on, I'm just pointing out what is going on right now. Another example is the server client side of co-op missions in even PvE and sometimes PvP, because sometimes, you know, these cause glitches like lags and performance issues to the point where sometimes the game is just unplayable. But here we are, still kicking rocks a year later, complaining about what? Shotgun stagger. You know, it's either the current player base is already immune to the game-breaking bugs, or those pushing for the specific changes like, oh, this gear set's too OP. Oh my goodness, this is it. Oh, you guys have an agenda. That's what it is. So your concern as a content creator, even myself, my responsibility is that we're calling out changes that benefit the entire game. Little changes like these, when there are some things that are broken, oh my goodness, it just shows our hypocrisy if we're not calling out the major changes. So somebody commented on some video, I can't remember, and I don't know if this is true. Please, this is up for investigation. Evasive tactics. I don't know if that skill is broken or not. Somebody said that talent's actually broken. I don't know, I'm about to investigate it. If that talent's broken, it's probably been broken since the beginning of the game. But here we are, we're talking about other things that are actually not as relevant. Now, if you're calling for changes that don't benefit the state of the game and you're pushing for changes to suit your play style or changes that are self-serving, man, I think you need to change your outlook. I need to change my outlook. If I find anything that's serving my play style, you know, I need to be able to say, well, actually, you know what? In fact, people have called me out for, you know, always promoting PvE stuff. They tell me all the time how PvE content is the most in this game and stuff, and we have those discussions. But in general, if Massive is prioritizing unnecessary changes over the necessary, then they're being reactionary, and themselves, Massive, are hurting the game. I'm not saying that Seeker Mines are not OP in Last Stand. Don't get me wrong. But what's worse is where you learn how to avoid seeker mines. You can dodge them. I mean, it's kind of difficult, but that server lag is telling you that the seeker mine is 3 meters away, when in reality, the lag literally made it that seeker mine just killed your agent. So do you see how frustrating that is? So where is the problem right now? Is the problem necessarily the seeker mine or the lag? So the lag is the problem, and I feel like that should be priority number 1 versus all the reactionary changes in the game. Now, remember when there was a push against unlimited rolling, when everybody could just, you know, do the dive roll, dive roll, dive roll, dive roll, you know, very few, you know, noticed that. But now that's one of the reasons it's also very difficult to dodge these so-called seeker mines, because there's already a 1 second delay between your rerolls. Add lag to that and you have this overpowered air burst that is impossible for you to dodge. So how Massive responds to these complaints and feedback in the Division 2 is going to be very critical for the game's success. Now let's establish the fact that you can't make everybody happy. And also we have to add the fact that, you know, people hate changes. So, you know, humans, and that's how we are. But the truth is this: change is sometimes necessary. So implementing change has to be first for the benefit of the game versus a small change that benefits a small minority, even if it benefits a majority or a big school of thought. But usually we always find out that the majority stand for changes that benefit the entire game itself. Now, no game is perfect, but I've been told that, you know, by some other people, that The Witcher is a perfect game, The Witcher 3 especially. So I'll have to exempt that. But other than The Witcher 3, no game is perfect. So Massive can easily solve issues that affect the entire game, or, you know, so that they don't jeopardize it. Also, Massive, beware of these so-called nerf complaints. Have the guys in your conceptualization teams ever wondered, why are people calling for these nerfs? Is it because the nerfs are, you know, game breaking? Or is it because those that are complaining feel at a disadvantage because they're forced to deal with aspects of this game that they don't like? So here's my argument. Massive needs to design a game and stand with their design. If there were no great game-breaking bugs in a game, I assure you, in this game, if there are no great game-breaking bugs, I can assure you that many people, the player base, will not be as low as it is right now. Most people don't give a hoot about OP gear sets or OP weapons. They're happy to play through counter meta builds all day long. But the frustrating thing is because of the game-breaking glitches. That's why Marco Style left the game. He said that many of the game-breaking glitches that he had pointed out, and he did point out a lot of them over the course of his time making content for this game, many of them were not fixed. Now, a good number of them were fixed, but there were still issues. So Massive, continue making decisions that benefit the entire game itself. Do that. That's where you've been strong. That's where the community has appreciated much more. Now, to end this video, I'm going to list some positive changes that I feel like have helped the game at critical points. I don't want this video to be all negative. So let me list 2 of them. The first one was in patch 1.4. This change made the game a much more rewarding area for all players. Now, I know the hardcore players complained that getting loot was too easy, and they were right to feel that way because, you know, instead of making getting loot too easy, I feel like the loot should have been made more relevant. So hence, the more time you spend playing the game, the more relevant loot you get, and the less time you spend, the less loot you get your hands on. Because if you run Lexington 100 times, you should be able to get your hands on a lot more relevant, you know, gear sets than the guy who runs it once. But still, the guy who runs it once needs to be able to get relevant gear sets at the same time. So how could they have solved that? Well, picking what gear set or weapon class you want as a reward after a mission will be a great way to implement that. You know, you still have to factor in RNG, you know, the rolls and the talents and the base damage and all those weapon stats. So those are things that could easily have been put in there to regulate how gear comes to people very fast. So that could be a way to implement the loot rationing in the future. So for the Division 2, the developers can take that into consideration. And another positive change made to this game was a scaling down of NPC damage in PvP post 1.3. This made PvP in the Dark Zone much more bearable, even though, you know, PvP in the Dark Zone still had its issues, but because rogue players would just run around and run through all the aggro, and, you know, you running and chasing after them, you know, you get hit by the NPCs and you're dead. You're dead from the environment more than you're even dead from rogue players. In 1.3, the rogue players, maybe they ran through like a contaminated zone, you probably died chasing them, not to even talk about maybe even the LMB. So these are just a few things that I feel like were done, and there are many more which made the game very, very good. But I wish Massive would prioritize the health of the game consistently over the needs of individuals who want to benefit themselves. Anyways, I invite you to join the discussion. I don't want to do an uber long video, and be sure to share this video with the whole community, share it on Twitter, wherever it is, so that people can start talking about this as the Division 2 draws closer and closer. I guess I'll talk to you guys soon. Thank you so much for listening and watching. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for continued in-depth discussion on the Division and the Division 2 in the future, hopefully. And I guess I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.